Hello and welcome back. I'm Britt Hume, and this is On the Record. As the two vice presidential candidates prepare to debate tonight, the national polling average shows Hillary Clinton with a nearly 4-point lead in a two-way race and an only slightly smaller one in a four-way. The betting odds continue to favor Mrs. Clinton by about 3-1, as you'll be able to see here in a moment when we get them up there. There they are. It seems clear that Mrs. Clinton has gained some ground in the past week, and the result has been a somewhat reshaped national map, as correspondent Shannon Bream explains.
It is time for a new look at the Electoral College map, where 270 remains the goal for winning the presidency. Since we last dug into the numbers, there has been a debate and a whole lot of new state and national polls as well. So based on crunching that data, here is where the map stands today. The heartland, as you can see, remains mostly deep red. Those are the solid GOP states. They account for 153 votes. The leaning GOP states, Iowa and Missouri, they bring you another 16. And you'll notice two states with interesting shading. You can see here Nebraska and Maine. That is because they actually split up the votes they award candidates. Each of them has a district which is leaning GOP. That adds another 2 votes. So in total, that puts solid or leaning GOP at 171. That is up 1 vote from the last time we checked in. There's still a large group of toss-up states. These are the ones that you see in yellow around the map. They now total 104 votes, down from 108 last week. That's because New Hampshire has shifted from a yellow toss-up to now leaning Democrat. Tucked into the toss-ups is Colorado. But we got to tell you, the last 2 major polls taken there, both post-debate, give Hillary Clinton a double-digit lead over Trump. So it appears to be trending in her favor. That is true also of Pennsylvania, which we have leaning Democrat. Post-debate polling shows Clinton widening a lead in that state as well. So you add it to the other leaning Democrat states and brings that group's total to 76. Coupled with the dark blue states, which are solidly Democrat, that they represent 187 votes. Those together, now states leaning and those solidly Democrat, they account for 263 votes. That is up 3 from before the debate. At last check, we were seeing a trend in Trump's favor, but now it appears that is stalled.
Shannon, thank you. So for more on those critical battleground states, I'm joined by Josh Kraushaar, politics editor at National Journal. Josh, nice to see you.
Good to be here, Brett.
What are you looking at? What are you seeing?
Well, this is a tale of 2 parts of the country. We're seeing a big bounce for Hillary Clinton in some of the more diverse, college-educated states. So Colorado, Hillary Clinton now has an 11-point lead, according to one new reputable poll. Florida, Hillary Clinton is starting to pull, or at least pull ahead to a small single-digit advantage in many of the new polls. But in the Rust Belt, in states like Ohio, Wisconsin, to a lesser extent, there's really no bounce for Hillary Clinton. In fact, Donald Trump actually gained ground in the Quinnipiac poll that came out this week. For Donald Trump, he went from
Ohio,
which is a state that's looking increasingly in Donald Trump's favor.
Now, what about Pennsylvania, which has been, of course, the kind of a place where Republican hopes have been dashed so many times, but it has been thought to be in play. Shannon pointed out that the polling there is looking increasingly favorable for Mrs. Clinton. Out of reach, do you think, for Donald Trump?
It's a must-win state, though it is definitely trending towards Hillary Clinton. And on paper, it's a demographic strong state for Donald Trump. But here's the
we've got this Monmouth poll. Just call your attention to this Monmouth poll that's on the screen. I'm not entirely down with Monmouth as a polling organization, but there it is, and it's a regular poll. It's a telephone poll. It's not some silly online poll. 10-point lead, and now we got Franklin and Marshall College 9-point lead. So that looks a little grim at the moment, doesn't it?
The thing that should scare the Donald Trump campaign in Pennsylvania is that after the debate, the white vote, the white women in particular, shifted markedly towards Hillary Clinton. That comment about Miss Universe that Donald Trump sort of made worse after the debate has clearly been a key pivot point in this race in Pennsylvania. So Trump was closing the gap in Pennsylvania before the debate. White women now favor Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania. Mitt Romney won white women in Pennsylvania by double digits back in 2012. So that is a huge constituency nationwide, but it is particularly important in Pennsylvania, where Trump needs to at least compete. He's going to lose suburban Philadelphia, but he needs to at least get it within striking distance of Hillary Clinton there.
Let's take a look. I'm going to get your thoughts about North Carolina. That's obviously a state where it looked like Trump might be doing pretty well. We have a fresh poll out in North Carolina today. This is from Elon University, and it shows Mrs. Clinton with a 6 percentage point advantage. What do you make of that?
It's a competitive state. It's a racially polarized state. Hillary Clinton is winning 98% of the African-American vote. That's a greater share than what President Obama won in North Carolina in 2012. So You have a white vote that's overwhelmingly Republican, a black vote that's overwhelmingly Democrat.
How's Trump doing with them white votes?
He's doing very well, but not enough. He needs to win about 65, 70, 75% of the white vote. He needs to win white suburban voters in the big population centers around the state. He's winning 61% of the white vote in that Elon poll. He needs to get about 10 points higher for him to have a good shot at winning.
So in other words, he's either got a diminished cutter margin among the black vote, which if it's 98%, that seems hard to believe that could hold to the election day, 98%.
And certainly Hillary Clinton talking about President Obama at the first debate, really trying to engage African-American voters in her campaign appearances in North Carolina. That's the Clinton campaign thinks if they win North Carolina, ball game over, and they think that they have a good chance right now.
Looks that way, yeah. Josh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brett.
The 2016 vice presidential debate starts in just under 2 hours from down at Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia. Before you doze off, folks, remember, one of the two men on the stage, Governor Mike Pence and Senator Tim Kaine, will be just a heartbeat away from the presidency, and many a vice president has gone on to be president. So what's Senator Kaine doing to prep for tonight? Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin has been following the Clinton campaign and is in Farmville tonight. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Britt. Well, Tim Kaine and his wife Ann Holden made an unannounced visit to a civil rights museum here in Farmville just a little while ago this afternoon. If you look at the guests that he chose to invite tonight, you can get an indication of who Tim Kaine hopes to appeal to tonight and on the campaign trail in these final 35 days. Among his guests tonight, Jesse Jackson, a female African-American professor who was denied an apartment based on the color of her skin, and the first black mayor of Richmond, the capital of Virginia, a state where polls show he is leading right now. Next door in North Carolina, polls are closer. Kaine spent 4 days prepping for the debate in Raleigh, North Carolina, where the African-American vote could be the difference between Clinton and Kaine winning a key state that President Obama lost in 2012. In North Carolina, the Clinton campaign says its registration efforts are paying off. There are 84,000 more African-American voters registered than on this day in 2012 in North Carolina, and 52,000 more Hispanic voters. According to the campaign, there is a 73% increase in requests for absentee ballots by African-American voters in North Carolina, and a 43% increase in Latino ballot requests compared to the same point in 2012. The Clinton campaign anticipates that more than 40% of the electorate will vote before November 8th in key battleground states, suggesting, they say, that the next few weeks will have nearly as much impact on the outcome of this election as Election Day itself. Early voting begins in Ohio next week, where Clinton is down by 5 points, according to Quinnipiac. Expect Tim Kaine also to appeal to Spanish-speaking voters tonight. He may speak a bit of Spanish, I'm told. He has been campaigning in Spanish and doing interviews in Spanish. The Clinton campaign released 2 Spanish-language ads targeting Florida and Nevada today. In fact, those were by her super PAC. New analytics from the Clinton campaign show that the number of Hispanic voters in Florida requesting vote-by-mail ballots are up 73% since this point in 2012. This is on top of the registration gains in both the African-American and the Hispanic communities. Robbie Mook, her campaign chair, was in the spin room here just a little while ago, and I asked him why they are having such trouble in Ohio. Here's what he said.
Close, competitive state. So we're not struggling. It's that both campaigns are, running neck and neck. And I think that the state's going to be won by a very close margin. We talk about the ground game. Ours, I would put up against his any day.
Requests for mail-in ballots in Florida are up 46%. The Clinton campaign thinks that is in their favor. We just heard that Donald Trump tweeted that tonight Mike Pence versus Tim Kaine is like a Ferrari against a Pinto. We just talked to Kaine's spokesperson who said, we'll take the American-made car any day. Back to you, Britt.
All right, Jennifer, thanks very much. A lot to digest there. Senator Kaine will, of course, square off, as you know, with Governor Mike Pence. Fox's campaign, Carl Cameron, has been with the Trump campaign and is also on the Longwood campus. Carl?
Hi, Britt. Well, while Kaine and Pence have been very aggressively prepping for this, the real contrast is between Pence and Donald Trump. Donald Trump's preparation has been described as something that needs to be improved by his own campaign team, and Pence has been very, very aggressive at it. For any vice presidential candidate, there's really only 2 events that matter. One is the convention speech, where there is no rebuttal, and two is the vice presidential debate. So both Pence and Kaine know that there's a lot riding on this tonight. Pence has been going over briefing books for weeks. From the moment Trump picked him for the team, he recognized that this was going to be a moment, and he's been studying on it in that regard. He's been doing mock debates with a sparring partner, and it's something that is, again, expresses the contrast between Pence and Trump. He has surrounded himself with about 6 or 7 people in his debate prep room. He constantly asks them questions about ways to rephrase or ways to pivot away from some of the issues that Kaine is likely to bring up tonight, and has been encouraging friends and family and people on the street to give him advice, whereas Trump has been dealing only with 3 or 4 of his aides, mostly in Trump Tower and occasionally on his plane when commuting. And as expected, he's got a very, very busy schedule, Trump does, for the next few days, traveling out to the West Coast, and that curbs his ability to prep. Mike Pence is taking this very, very seriously. He comes loaded with a lot of policy criticisms of Hillary Clinton. He recognizes thoroughly that the expectation tonight is that he will be critical of Hillary Clinton and he will defend Donald Trump, both in terms of the controversies that Trump's rhetoric has sparked and the questions about his temperament. And they couldn't be much different. Mike Pence is very quiet and soft-spoken. His aides have said very bluntly, don't expect a lot of name-calling. He'll be aggressive and he'll be critical, but he's not going to toss epithets, something that Pence basically swore off when he lost one of his first races for Congress. And they note that Trump said when he picked Pence, he didn't pick Pence to be the attack dog. That's something that Donald Trump can pretty much handle on his own, Brett.
All right, Carl. He certainly has done so. Thanks very much.
You
well,
bet.
From the primaries to that first presidential debate, just about every debate has seemed more and more like reality TV. Tonight, though, some have suggested the vice presidential matchup could be the most substantive we've seen. Our nightly political panel is here, editor of the Weekly Standard, Bill Kristol, and senior editor at The Federalist, Molly Hemingway. So, Molly, what are you looking for tonight? What do you think this is going to be like?
Well, as Cameron just said, usually you do have in a vice presidential candidate an attack dog. In this case, both the tops of the ticket are handling the attack dog role just fine, and so we're going to not see as much of that happening. But we also don't have much other interesting stuff that we can fully anticipate, in part because the two candidates have differences of policy with the top of the ticket. So I don't know how much they're going to want to get into policy when they disagree with the people that they're running with on issues like...
Don't you think they're sure to be asked about the policy differences, though? Or at least each is going to deal with their opponent's policy differences with the person at the head of the ticket.
It will certainly be interesting to see how they thread the needle of talking about the positions that the people that they're running with hold without compromising what they themselves say.
Bill?
I mean, one issue in which they don't have a difference with the top of the ticket, I think, is gun control. I think Mike Pence has been a pretty strong Second Amendment supporter, no interest in gun control measures, at least at the federal level. Tim Kaine was governor during the 2007 Virginia Tech massacre, really a terrible moment in Virginia and nationally. He handled it well. I think he was thought to handle it with dignity and appropriately. And he became, from that moment on, and maybe he was even a little before, in Virginia, a state which is not a big gun control state, a very strong proponent of gun control measures. That is an issue that I think the Democrats now think helps them. I would say conventional wisdom has mostly been that to shy away from that issue.
Very dangerous issue
since '94. Yeah, I mean, Bill Clinton, I think, famously said after in '94 when they lost Congress that he thought the gun issue hurt them as much as anything. They may think the dynamics have changed, whatever. I think they could be more of that issue. I don't think even came up, did it, in the first Clinton-Trump debate, the presidential debate? I would not be surprised if that becomes a bit of a centerpiece of an exchange, because it is an issue where they do agree with the top of their ticket, and so they'll both be eager to make their case on it. I think Kaine especially will raise it pretty early on. This debate isn't happening that far from where the Virginia Tech massacre was. They're tougher politicians than people appreciate. Their sort of policy, they're not Trump, and they don't have the baggage of Hillary Clinton. So by contrast with those two, I suppose everyone looks tame and so forth. But they've won tough election campaigns in states and districts that weren't easy. And they know how to press.
I would expect this to be pretty civilized, wouldn't you, Molly?
I think it certainly will be, and also both candidates have to kind of introduce themselves to a national audience.
Right.
And with only 40% of Americans knowing who they are, and I think 2/3 said they didn't know enough about Tim Kaine to actually form an opinion about him. Wow. So a lot of it will be introduction, and usually first impression should not be terribly hostile. It will be interesting to see if Mike Pence does better on a national stage than he did last time he was on a national stage, which was when a religious liberty battle hit Indiana, and he had always been a strong proponent of religious liberty, and he totally caved in the pressure in the face of pressure from social justice warriors. And so he usually talks a good game, but he did not handle himself well there. It'll be interesting to see how he can hold up against his opponent
Quick
this
last
time.
word, Bill.
I think one thing their staff is telling them, which I certainly told Vice President Quayle in 1992, and he did well, is attack the presidential candidate of the other party, ignore the guy on the stage with you. If you're going to change the dynamics of this campaign at all, you've got to raise new doubts. If you're Mike Pence, about Hillary Clinton and about the third term for Barack Obama, if you're going to help Donald Trump, conversely, if you're Tim Kaine, you've got to just reinforce the doubts about Donald Trump.
Bill, Molly, thank you. Don't go away. Right now, let's speed read some other news in the world of politics. Donald Trump will spend tonight's vice presidential debate exactly how you might have expected him to, on Twitter. Trump tweeted this out to his 12 million followers, quote, "I will be watching the great Governor Mike Pence and live tweeting the VP debate tonight starting at 8:30 p.m. EST. Enjoy." We're told Trump will watch the debate at his Trump International Hotel out in Las Vegas. The WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has backtracked on his promised bombshell. For weeks, Assange had teased that he would release a pile of damning information about Hillary Clinton. But earlier today, during what was supposed to be the big reveal at a news conference, Assange revealed no new information. He did, however, promise to publish some new info in the coming weeks. If you're one of the millions of Americans with a Yahoo email address, you may have been spied on. Reuters has reported that the company agreed to search all of its users' incoming emails for specific words on behalf of the NSA and FBI. That means hundreds of millions of email accounts were watched. Reuters did not report which words were being searched. In a short statement, Yahoo said simply that it complies with all U.S. laws. New Hampshire Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte is in cleanup mode after she said she would absolutely consider Donald Trump a role model. Ayotte, who has not endorsed Trump, said that yesterday during a New Hampshire Senate debate against her opponent, Governor Maggie Hassan. Later, Ayotte said she misspoke and doesn't believe either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton are good role models for kids. And Donald Trump has found himself in another media firestorm over off-the-cuff comments he made about veterans. But have the media distorted his words? That's next. Also, the big VP debate's about 100 minutes away. What can we expect tonight? We'll go back to Farmville, Virginia a little later. That's coming up. Stay with us. Mainstream media immediately pounced. Take a look at some of these headlines. Politico wrote, quote, "Trump appears to suggest veterans with PTSD are not strong." NBC News wrote, "Trump implies vets suffering PTSD can't handle war." And the Daily Beast wrote, "Draft dodger Trump, PTSD sufferers are weak." But that is not how many people in the audience seem to take it. The Marine Staff Sergeant who asked Trump the question released a statement that reads in part, quote, "I think it's sickening that anyone would twist Mr. Trump's comments to me in order to pursue a political agenda. I took his comments to be thoughtful and understanding of the struggles many veterans have, and I believe he is committed to helping them." And of course, Hillary Clinton also pounced and said this just a short time ago on the campaign trail.
Yesterday, Donald Trump was asked a question about post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, and other challenges facing many of our troops. Part of his response was that post-traumatic stress happens to troops who, quote, "can't handle it." He said, if you're strong, you can handle it. Many people are now standing up and speaking out against Trump because post-traumatic stress is not something that strong people can handle and weak people can't. Some of the strongest men and women any of us will ever meet have experienced post-traumatic stress. Donald Trump's comments are not just ignorant, they're harmful because they give voice to the stigma that has led generations of veterans to hide their struggles instead of getting life-saving help.
Hillary Clinton aside, are the media being fair to Trump? Media reporter and columnist for The Hill newspaper, Joe Concha, is in New York City. Joe, what do you think?
Brett, I think that Donald Trump says and tweets a lot of things that deserved analysis, scrutiny, and oftentimes criticism. This is not one of those times. And the reason why I could say that so definitively, Britt, that he's getting a raw deal here is because our reporting from The Hill of people that were at that audience last night, those veterans that were there, you played or at least showed a quote from one of them, and others, no one had a problem with what Donald Trump said that were in the room who listened to the question and the answer in full. And the reporting today has been taking small quotes of what Trump said and then adding the word implies in terms of him saying that veterans that can't handle war are weak. This is media malfeasance in this case, Britt, and it shows you why that the media right now is only trusted by not 60, not 16, but 6%, according to an Associated Press survey in April. People saying they have high confidence in the media, just 6%. It's because of this sort of malpractice that we saw today.
It does raise a question for Republican politicians in general, though, it seems to me, Joe, and that is Republican candidates cannot count on balanced coverage from the media. And they inhabit a world where anything that they say, if it is not carefully, very carefully worded, can be wrested from its context, its tone set aside to make it seem that they have made a mistake, said something that is completely, politically harmful. It seems to me that that's what happened here, in the sense that Trump did suggest, that there were strong people in the room who could have handled that, and some of the troops that came home from war in recent times could not. Obviously, his tone was sympathetic. He was very sort of soft-spoken. But isn't this kind of a problem, something that Republicans, fairly or not, have to kind of plan for and be aware of?
Well, Britt, I would even say it's a problem for Republicans, yes, but it's really a problem for Donald Trump, because he so oftentimes speaks off the cuff. He speaks in terms of being spontaneous, and it's always, or most often, it's inelegant, and therefore you can cherry pick certain things that he says and say, aha, this is what I think he was saying, and then take him to task for it. But again, I mean, no one's going to ask Hillary Clinton, who suddenly really cares about the Veterans Affairs system. She said just last year that she didn't think it was a, quote, widespread problem. I want to see then a reporter follow up with her and say, okay, I heard what you said about Trump yesterday. Do you still think it's not a widespread problem? So, again, I think Trump was just saying that it's human nature. Some people can handle things differently than others. The system is broken. We need to fix it, and we shouldn't leave these veterans behind. That's the way I took it. That's the way the people in that room took it. That's not the way the media took it, because, Britt, that's not the way they wanted to take it, because they were trying to twist a narrative once again, as they've done so often during this campaign.
Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett.
Well, the political world is focused on Farmville, Virginia, and the vice presidential debate. We will head out on the campaign trail to see how Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton spent their day. Plus, we'll go back to Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia, as the vice presidential debate draws closer and closer. Stay with us. While the political world descends on Farmville, Virginia in the 2016 vice presidential debate, the candidates at the top of the tickets are busy in battleground states. Today, Donald Trump is in Arizona, where the most recent NBC Wall Street Journal poll from early last month shows Trump up 2 points among likely voters in a four-way race. But how are people in Arizona feeling now? Fox News senior national correspondent John Roberts is in Prescott Valley, Arizona, where Trump held a rally earlier today. John?
Brett, good evening to you. Up 2 points in the latest polls here in Arizona, but 2 points isn't necessarily a good thing, because if you look back over history, Mitt Romney, John McCain, George Bush all won this state by 10 points or so. This is actually looking more like the race in 1996, when Bill Clinton was the last Democrat to win the state of Arizona. He won by 2 points. That said, though, Donald Trump did have a big rally today in Prescott Valley. According to the police, it's the biggest event they've ever seen. 7,000 people inside the building, thousands more outside. Donald Trump opened the rally with what he called a preview of tonight's vice presidential debate, saying it would be a contrast between his campaign, which is all about change, and Hillary Clinton's campaign, which he says is stuck in the past. He also took on the growing problem with Obamacare. And people in Arizona, Britt, are facing huge rate rises of 50% or more, pointing out that Bill Clinton said just yesterday it's, quote, the craziest system he's seen. Here's Trump from just a short time ago.
Clinton added that it doesn't make any sense and that the insurance model doesn't work. In the meantime, she wants to double down on Obamacare. I'll bet he went through hell last night. There have been many nights he's gone through hell with Hillary, in all fairness.
Yeah. As you can imagine, Trump got a lot of laughs with that line. He also went back to the issue of the tax returns, accusing Hillary Clinton of hypocrisy for hitting him, but leaving some of her very big donors alone. Here again is Trump.
After years of failure, she complains about how I've used the tax laws of this country to my benefit. Then I ask a simple question. Why didn't she ever try to change those laws so I couldn't use them? The reason that she did not do that is her donors and contributors have used those same tax laws as I did, the same way.
Donald Trump pointed out that one of Hillary Clinton's biggest donors, in fact, one of the Democratic Party's biggest donors, George Soros, lost $1.5 billion in the space of 6 months. Trump wondered if he wasn't taking advantage of the same tax laws that Trump did. Brett?
John, interesting to hear him commenting on Obamacare, which, you know, he had certainly Bill Clinton gave him the opening there. That issue hasn't been emphasized that much. We're going to talk about this a little later, but that issue hasn't been emphasized very much. Has he begun to pick up on it more?
Well, certainly, Britt, with all of the other noise in the campaign, it's something that has kind of been drowned out. But Donald Trump mentions Obamacare in almost every rally that I've ever been to. And again, here in Arizona, it's a particularly thorny issue because at least 2 of the insurance companies who are providing insurance under Obamacare wanted to raise rates here by 60% or more. And it looks now like about the average rate increase here in the state of Arizona could be at least around 49%. Then, of course, there's all this talk about exercising the public option. So it is something that Donald Trump talks about a lot. But with all of the other things that he talks about, Britt, sometimes it gets lost in the chatter. Understood.
John, thank you very much. Hillary Clinton today was in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania, where some recent Keystone State polls showing her now with a sizable lead. A new Franklin and Marshall College poll of likely voters puts Clinton 9 points ahead of Trump in a 4-way race, and a new Monmouth University poll, also of likely voters, has her up 10 points, that also in a 4-way race. Fox News senior political correspondent Mike Emanuel is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where Clinton spoke earlier today. Mike?
Britt, good evening. That latest Monmouth poll notes that Hillary Clinton is doing much better with white voters here in Pennsylvania, particularly white women. So Clinton tried to build on that today, doing 2 events here in the Keystone State. Hillary Clinton encouraged folks to get their neighbors and their friends to register to vote ahead of the deadline. After the rally, Clinton tried to clean up a mess made by her husband, the former president, who called the health care law, Obamacare, a crazy mess.
I've been saying we've got to fix what's broken, keep what works, and that's exactly what we're going to do. I am committed to making sure that people retain coverage that they can afford.
Clinton was also asked about WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who has threatened more damaging leaks of private information ahead of Election Day. Clinton was asked if Assange could potentially upend the race for the White House, and was also asked about a report suggesting she once threw out the idea of sending a drone to take out Assange.
I don't know anything about what he's talking about, and I don't recall any joke. It would have been a joke if it had been said, but I don't recall that.
To be clear, Hillary Clinton said she didn't recall it, but she didn't flat out deny it. Britt?
Mike, interesting. Thank you very much. Hillary Clinton may have gotten a boost from the first debate, but Donald Trump still, as we've reported repeatedly, holds rallies in front of massive sellout crowds. So, who really has the most enthusiastic supporters? We've got the poll numbers next. Plus, tonight's vice presidential debate should provide another bump for the candidates. Can Governor Mike Pence slow down Clinton's momentum with a big night? Stay with the Fox News all night long for live coverage and analysis of the debate. Tonight's only vice presidential debate is now less than 90 minutes away. The crowds here are ready, but how enthusiastic are their supporters? A CBS News poll found 46% of likely Trump voters are very enthusiastic to vote. That's down 2 percentage points from last month. That same poll also found 46% of likely Clinton voters are very enthusiastic. That is up 7 points from 39% last month. Democratic strategist Joe Trippi is at the VP debate in Farmville, Virginia. Joe, that increase in enthusiasm is obviously good news for the Clinton camp. What do you think is the cause of it?
Well, I think one, her debate performance, and I think Trump's following up with that with some of the pitfalls that he's had over the last 5 or 6 days, clearly has energized her supporters. The thing about this, Britt, was there was no doubt that Trump's supporters were much more energized and more enthusiastic throughout the whole year. I mean, during the primaries and now in the general. What Democrats were hoping would make up for that was Clinton's advantages on her organization, being able to organize and get out the vote much stronger than what they thought Trump was going to do. That was going to be the great equalizer. If this poll's right and her energy level has come up with her supporters, now that increased organizational ability, that get out the vote ability, turns into an advantage, not an equalizer. It would be interesting to see if other polls start to confirm this, but this is a pretty unexpected, even by me, to show up right now. I didn't think that, I think a lot of people doubted whether her supporters would have this kind of energy, but right now in the CBS poll, it's equal to Trump's. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I recognize that, and it takes me back to a campaign that I know you very well remember because you were involved in it. I covered Walter Mondale back in 1984, and he won that first debate, you may recall, pretty handily against President Reagan. And I remember, boy, there was a spring in his step after that, and you could sense the enthusiasm in the campaign that he might have a fighting chance to win that race, although he continued to trail.
Sure.
It petered out. Fairly quickly.
Yeah, then Reagan, Reagan came back in the second debate, and with humor and his style just sort of overwhelmed the Mondale effort, that first victory. So things can obviously change, and they did in that one. But I think it is significant, again, with her organizational ability and this momentum that she seems to have and the newfound energy in her supporters. Right now, it's Trump has to turn this, I think.
Yeah, this makes the second debate particularly critical for him, I would think, and affords him, some risk perhaps, but an opportunity to reverse that momentum and get things back in the enthusiasm department, at least where they were.
Yeah, and the other thing, going back to that 1984 example, if you remember, Fritz Mondale had these huge crowds going towards the end, and it kind of faked us into thinking maybe we were catching it, and of course we didn't. So we'll see if if Trump can get this back in the bottle or not.
Joe, as always, thank you very much. President Bill Clinton hit the campaign trail for his wife, and as you've heard, he blasted Obamacare, but he's not the only Democrat going after President Obama's signature law. Even the New York Times has joined in. Our panel is back on that issue straight ahead, plus the small town of Farmville, Virginia, now at the center of the political world. The vice presidential debate kicks off in just a short time right here on Fox News. As we keep reminding you, tonight's vice presidential debate begins in just a little bit over an hour here now. Governor Mike Pence and Senator Tim Kaine will square off in front of the American people by television. No one expects as many viral moments as the first Trump-Clinton debate, but that doesn't mean history will not be made, as in vice presidential debates past. Watch.
I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did. He sought the presidency.
It's a moment that pundits and politicos have talked about for decades, when Senator Lloyd Bentsen delivered what was considered a devastating rejoinder to Republican Dan Quayle in the 1988 vice presidential debate.
I served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
In almost every election since 1976, America has tuned into vice presidential debates on primetime television. With just hours to go before tonight's showdown, the candidates might be taking a look at what worked and what didn't from past debates.
Admiral, nice to see you, sir.
1992, independent candidate Ross Perot's running mate, the former POW Admiral James Stockdale, opened his remarks with a question.
Admiral Stockdale, your opening statement, please, sir.
Who am I? Why am I here?
Those questions were rhetorical, but to many viewers at home, it didn't come off that way. Pundits and analysts pounced.
Welcome to the 1996 vice presidential debate.
In 1996, Democrat Al Gore tried to set a humorous tone in his debate with Republican Jack Kemp.
I'd like to start by offering you a deal, Jack. If you won't use any football stories, I won't tell any of my warm and humorous stories about chlorofluorocarbon abatement. It's a deal.
In the 2000 election, Senator Joe Lieberman faced off with Republican Dick Cheney in an engaged, friendly, and informative debate.
I am delighted to be here tonight with you, Joe. And I, too, want to avoid any personal attacks. I promise not to bring up your singing. So
I promise not to sing.
Okay.
4 years later, Vice President Cheney struck a different tone when he made an issue of first-term Senator John Edwards' lack of experience.
The first time I ever met you was when you walked on the stage tonight.
2008 was the most watched vice presidential debate ever. Nearly 70 million people tuned in to watch Senator Joe Biden spar with Alaska Governor Sarah Palin.
The middle class has gotten the short end. The wealthy have done very well. Corporate America has been rewarded some time. We change it. Barack Obama will change it.
Governor. Say it ain't so, Joe. There you go again, pointing backwards again, though. You prefaced your whole comment with the Bush administration. Now, doggone it.
In 2012, Biden was back, this time against House Republican Paul Ryan. For viewers at home, the debate featured nonstop side-by-side images of Joe Biden's relentless grin, and also a reference to the first debate we featured just moments ago.
Jack Kennedy lowered tax rates, increased growth. Ronald Reagan.
Now you're Jack Kennedy.
Ronald Reagan.
And so it has gone in the past. There's a new burst of Democratic complaints have piled up against Obamacare. Yesterday, former President Bill Clinton said this at a Hillary Clinton event. Watch.
You've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and then the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world.
President Clinton is hardly the only Democrat to speak out. Even White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest admitted more needs to be done. And the usually liberal New York Times wrote this headline, quote, "Ailing Obama Health Care Act may have to change to survive." Our nightly political panel is back. Editor of the Weekly Standard, Bill Kristol, senior editor of the Federalist, Molly Hemingway. So, Molly, what do you make? What do you make of this?
I think it really speaks to how smart of a politician Bill Clinton is. He knows how to triangulate on an issue. Liberals have made a lot of fun of Republicans for how much they have talked against Obamacare, and yet they have made humongous gains electorally by focusing on Obamacare in the last two elections. You have the New York Times, which is always liberal, not just usually, admitting that it's a failure. And I think that Bill Clinton knows this is a smart topic that is not being talked about as much as it should be on the Republican side of the aisle. It's not a spent issue. It's a winning issue. Polls still show that it's very unpopular.
How does it help for him to criticize it?
He's speaking to the concerns. A lot of people have concerns about Obamacare, and so he's addressing that, knowing that that is a problem people have. Also, if Hillary Clinton is elected president, she's going to have this horrible mess she has to deal with. So he's laying the groundwork, preparing people for how much of a problem it is.
Bill Clinton just can't help but imply that perhaps if he were president, it would have been structured more carefully, and then we wouldn't have these subsidies falling off a cliff. Bill Clinton's Weekly Standard reader, I trust, and he's read many pieces by John McCormick and Jeff Anderson and others pointing out that it is a crazy situation. Your income goes up $1,000, and suddenly your subsidy goes away, and you're looking at a $15,000 health care plan you have to pay for out of your own pocket. So it's not a well-structured program. We've known that for a long time. Molly is absolutely right. Republicans won the House on Obamacare in 2010. And they really won the Senate on Obamacare in 2014, running against a bunch of first-term Democratic senators whose key vote had been for Obamacare. It's the domestic policy initiative of the Obama administration, an administration Hillary Clinton was part of, although on the foreign policy side. And it is mystifying that it's not more of an issue in this campaign for the Republican Party. It didn't really come up
during the debate very much, did it? Last word, Molly.
It didn't come up at all. I would be surprised if it doesn't come up tonight, but it also needs to come up in subsequent events.
All right, Bill, Molly, thanks for coming in tonight. Coming up, we've been doing this for a few weeks now, but the mean tweets have not slowed down. I'll read some of them next. Plus, we're almost at the 1-hour countdown. Yes, that's right, for the first vice presidential debate. Well, you can see it right here at 9 on Fox News. Stay tuned, folks. Now it's time for another round of feedback from you, the viewers. First up is LTVK13, who tweeted, quote, "Oh, please, Britt, you're ridiculous. You hated Trump from day one and said he wouldn't make it. How you feel now? All mean tweets about you are true. Hashtag not sorry." But Alicia Gregory said, "You amuse me. You may stay." Robert M. tweeted, "Personally, I think you're the 2016 version of Walter Cronkite. He was the most respected man on TV. No, I'm not related to you." Charles Sherman, obviously also no relative, said, "You couldn't find your ass with a map and a flashlight, let alone do the news." Ouch. But he quickly followed up with this. "Hope you didn't take my tweet to heart, trying to get on the show. Keep up the great reporting." Well, you did. And finally, Paul Donato tweeted, "Hey, Britt, I think your show is great. On the other hand, I agree with my wife when she says you sound like you're drunk. Go Brit. Please keep the feedback coming, folks. We really do like hearing from you. Tweet me using @BritHume or email ontherecord@foxnews.com. That's about it for us tonight. The O'Reilly Factor's up next, in which he will ask me to respond to his talking points about the state of the Trump campaign. Please don't let that keep you from watching. We leave you, as always, with our political quote of the day. This one from the editor and political organizer Oscar Ameringer, who said, quote, "Politics is